Today we are going to go over the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement for the Georgia Association of Realtors, the GAR form. This is the sign that the agent is wanting you to sign and needing you to sign to actually list your property. We are going to go through some of the things that are I guess what it all means. We're not going to deep dive into everything, but at least give you a touch base on what you should maybe look more into and to understand what to expect of them and what you need to do if you need to sign this, or if you do sign this, what exactly you can be liable to do. So let's dive in. So as I said, this is Georgia specific. This is investing in Georgia. That's what you should probably expect. Every state's going to have its own uh, contracts. Generally, we say have the GAR forms. Is the Georgia Association of Realtors. Pretty much every state's going to have their own. Every state realtor group's going to have their own. Some local ones might have different ones, and there are also many contracts. There are a lot of other contracts that will meet all the legal requirements to sell property. So, but this is probably what you're going to see if you're in Georgia. Most agents choose these. All right, so we got the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement. All right, exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement. All right, so this is first thing you're going to write in. It's going to be the address of the house, the city, the county, and the zip code. Then the tax parcel ID. Your agent's probably going to be able to get this. Your agent will probably ask you if you have the deed. If he does, he would do this and just make a copy it and make it part of this document. Or if not, they'll go to the tax information and put in the deed book and page from the last time it was recorded. There's another way of doing it, which is through the land lots, etc. And it's through the Condominium Act. So if you have a condominium, I'd go in here. I'm not going to get into all the details on what that would be. So we got the list price and listing period. Obviously, this is the price you're going to list it at. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to sell for that, but that's what you're going to start at. Commencement date of agreement, and that's when the agreement starts. The date and the ending date of the agreement usually you can set up anytime you want. If you want to do it for a year, sign the agreement, or 3 months. So at any time you can terminate this agreement if you don't like what the agent is doing, or if you're just not working well together, you can unilaterally cancel this contract. There's going to be some stipulations about that we'll get into later, but I just wanted to let you know that up front. So the marketing, they're going to put it into the different MLSs. Here in Atlanta, I've mainly got FMLS, and I also have the Georgia MLS. Where I'm in the work in the northern metro and northern Georgia area. However, I've also been a member of the Mid Georgia MLS, which is more the Macon area. I think it's the Central Georgia MLS, which is more towards like Warner Robins. I might not got that one exactly right. It's been a few years. So this is the MLSs. It's in this agreement that you have to put it in there within a day. Marketing commencement date. That's when you actually start marketing the property. These can be different for multiple reasons of getting the property ready, or like some type of listing strategy. Like if you want to have it my brain is not working at the moment. If you want to have it like a coming soon type of thing. Okay, this is coming soon. If you want a coming soon status, I'm going to get a little bit more into that with this next one, MLS marketing strategies. So, immediate public marketing option, which is what you should probably do. There's also delayed marketing exempt option, which is new in the last couple of years, which is kind of as a result of that lawsuit with the realtors, the collusion or whatever, and the office marketing options. So the office marketing exclusive. So this would be for what we generally call like a pocket listing. Say, for example, you know an agent, you want to say, I want you to sell this house, but I don't want it all over MLS. You don't want people coming. You just want to try to reach out to people that they know that might be interested in it. And so this delayed marketing exempt option is kind of like a middle ground between the pocket listing and the immediate public marketing option. I personally don't really understand the benefits of it because to my understanding, all it does is it sends things directly to the MLSs, but not directly to like the Zillows and all Realtor.com and all that. I don't understand the benefit of it, why you would want that, but because if it's on MLS, agents are going to get it, people are going to know. And there's a disclaimer saying by signing this agreement, you understand that the seller is delaying the marketing, and that they know it might not be the benefits of marketing your property and getting your property out to as many buyers as possible. Whew. All right, compensation. So generally, the compensation of brokers is negotiable and not set by law. You can pay your brokers in any way. You can do as percentage. The standard is like 6% total, with 3% going to your selling agent and 3% going to the buyer's agent, which would be 6% here and then 3% there. And you have to check these boxes accordingly. But you can also just say, come up with a listing price or some type of other compensation. Not include. So then this is where it's said by the compensation being offered to the buyer's broker. And the seller, you can either pay for it and have it in the listing. I recommend not doing that because then you're going to have a whole nother level of negotiation coming up where you have to negotiate the agent's compensation, the buyer's agent. Or what's generally best is the seller's your agent is going to pay the buyer's agent out of their part. All right. Or no compensation being offered. You can do that. I'm not going to get into leases. Protected period. What is a protected period? Protected period. If you have an agent and they bring you a buyer, and then you decide you don't like that, but you don't like that agent, and then you still sign a contract with one of the people that agent brought, you can still owe that agent money. Does that make sense? So you have your house listed for sale, and you have your agent brings a buyer to the house. Say you cancel your agreement with that buyer, or say you cancel your agreement with that agent, but then you later sign a contract with that buyer. You could still owe your agent that money because they brought that buyer to you. And this is the date, it can be for, usually it's like 180 days, something like that. You can negotiate that. Following types of agency relationship not offered by the broker. And this one always throws me off because so if you would do the seller, if you're going to be your seller agency, you obviously click on the ones that you're not offering. You don't want to do a landlord, tenant, sub-agency, dual agency, or designated agency. Not even going to get into those here. Generally don't want to do them. So you don't want to say do those. If broker, at the dual agency, I don't recommend for you. And this is the lead-based paint disclosure. If you're 1978, you got to say it's either yes or no. I have a whole nother video on that, the lead video, if you want more information on what's in that, and my opinion on that document. All right, seller has the following special cert. So if you're at the selling the house and you don't have the full authority to list the property for sale, you have to say in bankruptcy, divorce, or other reason. Or also, if you have one of these situations, you can list it but not necessarily sell it because you have bankruptcy, divorce, short sale, or your name is not on the title for some reason. And there's other reasons as well. But you have to say that if it even if you got a agreement of a price, you would have to say that you need to consult with some other people before that. Negotiation: the seller does or does not authorize the broker to assist in negotiation to the extent requested by the seller in negotiating the terms of and filling out the pre-printed forms, contracts for seller's review and approval. All right. So if you agree to have the agent help with negotiation, which I generally recommend. Obviously, as the owner, you make the final decision on everything and you can determine what input they have. Exclusive seller brokerage agreement. This is the seller. This is saying that you have the full authority to do this. You are the person that can do that and sign that off. Here, let me catch up on my page over here. I'm reading this as well because I got some notes. All right. So we get the list price, obviously. It's what you agreed to put it in for. They got the initial listing period, which is the time you want it for. It's usually like 6 months or something like that, just to cover everything. But if you want to do shorter, you can negotiate that. If during the term of the agreement, the seller and the prospective buyer into a contract, so if you enter into a contract before the end of that date, that will like extend it to the closing, etc. Or a contract to exchange. If you want to get more info on this, you just kind of look. I'm not trying to dive into everything, just trying to give you a basic understanding. If you have specific questions, you can ask me. My contact information is below, or you can ask your agent, whichever one you want. Say I work in from the Atlanta area up to Jasper. I'm centered in Canton, but I also go over to Cartersville. I go from Northwest Atlanta area as well. All right, marketing. Broker is exclusively authorized to market and advertise the property for sale to the public through any means of broker's choosing. This may include, without limitations, flyers, etc., all those fun for sale sign things. The ownership of marketing materials, any photography and marketing materials paid for and created by the broker shall be the property of the broker. So if they get nice pictures done, those are your agent's pictures, not yours. Liability for misinformation. If you're saying anything, you got to be honest with what's in there. Obviously, you can't lie about what the property you're selling is. Images: seller agrees to remove any personal property prior to listing. So if you have got something you don't want seen in the pictures, you need to get them out. Broker agrees to file this agreement with the MLS within 1 day, so they can agree to put this up there and get it all marketed out there for you. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Consent, so your agents can be able to call you even if you're not on the do not call list, which seems. Then also you're gonna the house is gonna be under lockbox and gonna have some type of control of the property, so you gotta have that. Saying obligation to pay compensation to seller's broker. So if they get you a ready, willing, and able buyer with some terms, with some criteria that we'll go over it a little bit more detail later as well, you are liable to pay that. Option compensation to buyer's broker. Seller have no obligation to pay the compensation to the buyer's broker. So you don't have to pay any compensation to the buyer's broker. If you don't, you're not required to. Separate compensation on lease. And someone got protected period. That's what I went over earlier. If you get a, if your agent finds you a buyer or shows a buyer the house, and then you sign that person ends up signing a contract with you, even if the contract, I already went over that enough. I think. So if an agent brings you a buyer and you sign with that and you end up selling to that buyer, you can still owe your agent the money. I think that's a good summary without getting into me bumbling all over myself again. Notwithstanding the above, if this agreement is not unilaterally terminated by the seller, the following exception to the above compensation obligations shall apply. Specifically, no compensation or leasing compensation as applicable shall be owed the broker if seller signs an exclusive broker engagement agreement with another broker and the property is then sold or leased during the term of the agreement with that broker. So if you unilaterally cancel it, if you just cancel the contract, as long as that your agent didn't bring one of the buyers that you later sign with within one of those days, you are fine. So you do have power. Basically, the agent will be out whatever photography and marketing expenses, but that's really it. You can cancel for any reason. Agency and brokerage. That's going to be the specific how they act as a full agent, which would be the selling agent. You can also have the designated agents and dual. I don't recommend that. You can have the client versus customer. I forget which ones those are. The customer would be less. The agent does less services and has less responsibilities to you. Don't get into that. Dual agency disclosure, you don't want to do that. If you don't know what it is, you don't want to do it. Designated agency disclosure, it's a little bit better. It's where they can pick your agent out of someone they know. For the other side, say if you had the selling agent say, oh, I know someone in my office that can represent the seller or the buyer. No adverse agency relationships. If there's any shadiness going on, and it's the agent is supposed to be act in your best interest. The agent is supposed to act in your best interest. Lead-based paint disclosure, went over all that in another video. It's not too exciting. If your house built before 1978, you have lead paint, you have to go through all this other stuff. Special circumstances. The sale of the property is contingent on third-party approval, as I said before. The broker agrees to keep confidential any information the seller asks to be kept confidential. Of course, there are limits to this, and the broker may not knowingly give customers false information. And in the event of a conflict between the broker's duty to not give false information and the duty to keep the confidence of the seller, the duty shall not give the customers false information shall prevail. So if an agent knows something or you tell them something, they might have to tell the potential buyers. Negotiation. While the seller may assist in negotiating the terms of a contract to sell, if seller has elected to have a broker assist in this role, all decisions regarding price, terms, or conditions in a contract to sell still are made by the seller. So that, as I said before, that is if you're an agent, it is your property, it's your decision. You can listen to them or not listen to them, what they say. Seller's property disclosure. All right. This requires a disclose known latent defects in the property which could not be observed by the buyer under a reasonable inspection of the property. This is even if it's as is, and that's due within 3 days of the agreement as well. If you specifically don't disclose something that you knew of, you can be held liable by the buyer. So there, we'll go into some of the conditions on that. Whether it's like, it's obvious that that the buyer should have been able to find out during their due diligence, then we get into that. But just say everything. It's just going to be a lot easier. You want all this stuff to be exposed up front anyways before you have to negotiate them, because if it comes up during the inspection period that they notice this, it's going to give them, they have more power at that point. So you want to disclose all that information up front so they know that going in, anything, the negatives. Because once you get under contract, they have the power to break the contract during that inspection period, which kind of gives you a negative view in the market because you went out from under contract during that inspection period. So it's just better to get it out there. All right, hazardous material. You got to say if there's hazardous material on and if say for example that the stairs are broken, you got to say you got to tell people. And it's not your agent's fault. You have to tell your agent as well. So when you bring over to your house, you need to let them know of any dangers. Limits on brokers. Say you may show the house to the potential buyers. Seems pretty obvious. Everything's got to be written these days. Shall have no duty to this is the seller acknowledges that the broker may show the property, and it's not their job to do the inspections and stuff like that. Any type of these inspections, for title, survey, etc. So you can't expect your agent to do all that stuff because it falls outside of the scope of a real estate brokerage services. Hopefully my head's not in the way there. You shall also owe no duties to the seller nor have any authority on behalf of the seller other than what is set forth in the agreement. So the broker shall owe no duties to the seller other than, so if it's not in there, the agent doesn't have to do anything for you if it's not specifically in the contract, whatever they agreed to. And if you agree to something outside of there, put it in writing. But shall make all disclosures. The agent shall make all disclosures required by law. And so if the agent knows something, they might have to tell them. And shall not be responsible for ensuring that the seller complies with duties. So it's not necessarily, they don't need to do extensive research to make sure that you do what you need to do. So it's not your agent's fault. So the agent may also be indemnified and held harmless by the seller during any determination of the agreement from any and all claims, causes of action, or damages arising out of or relating to inaccurate or incomplete information provided by the seller to the broker. So it's not their fault if you didn't provide full information. Earnest money handled by the one other than the broker. So if you give your earnest money to whoever you give the earnest money deposit to, it's not your agent's fault. Seller's negligence due to intentional wrongdoing. do whatever that's intentional wrongdoing. Any loss or theft of valuables, property relating to the same use of a lockbox. So it's not your agent's responsibility for that. There is a fund. Yeah, so if a buyer brings people in there and they happen to steal something, it's not your broker's fault. It's not your agent's fault. And it might not be the other agent's fault, but there is a fund that is set up by the Georgia Real Estate Commission if the agent was like knowingly involved in all that you can get money from. Whew. I'm pretty sure. The existence of all undisclosed material facts. I'm just trying to go through any damages occurring to the property as a result of dangerous or defective conditions on the property or failure to secure or restrain pets. Your agent is not responsible for restraining your pets if someone gets injured by them. Shall have no authority to bind seller to any contract or give notices on behalf of a seller other than to forward it if requested by the seller. So the agent can't sign anything for you. All right, limits on broker's liability. Seller acknowledges that broker shall under no circumstances have any liability other than the compensation paid. Broker shall have no liability for providing information that later turns out to be inaccurate or false. Notwithstanding the above, shall have no liability in excess of $100 for any loss of the funds of wiring or cyber fraud. And this limitation of liability shall survive the termination of this agreement. Disclosure of potentially fraudulent activities. Your agent has to report these as part of the Georgia Residential Mortgage Fraud Act. Let's see, like by law, and your agent has to report anything they think is fraud. Seller acknowledges that broker does not give special expertise with presented finding fraud, etc. Miscellaneous. This is fun stuff, isn't it? All claims arising out of or relating to this agreement and the alleged acts of the emissions shall be treated in arbitration. So if there are any disagreements, will be sent to arbitration. Assignability. As a part of a sale of all or substantially all the assets of a broker to another brokerage firm, seller consents to this agreement being assigned by the broker to another brokerage firm. Something happens, if your broker gets sold, your liabilities potential would go to the next company that buys them. Attorney's fees. In the event of this agreement or any provisions, it is enforced to subject of a dispute resolution in litigation or arbitration. The prevailing party shall be entitled to recover its actual attorney's fees reasonably incurred. Broker. Can we see this? Broker. If the agreement, a term broker shall mean a licensed agent. Definition of seller and buyer. You know what a seller and a buyer is. It can be potentially anyone related to you, like a company you own, or that you own 10% or more in, if I recall. So it's not just you. Disclaimer regarding the sale of certain property. This is Georgia state law prohibits certain resident aliens, foreign persons, or foreign companies and U.S. companies owned by any of the following from buying or possessing agricultural land and certain land within 10 miles of a military base, installation, or airport. Military airport. That's pretty rare that would come up. Entire agreement. This agreement represents the entire agreement for parties with respect to listing the property for sale and is intended to supersede all prior and written verbal agreements and the parties hereunto. Fair housing disclosure. The agent cannot discriminate for any reason. If you ask them to, they can tell on you, and you cannot make them do it. So, this is foreign persons. There's a certain. I don't fully understand this one. It's a FERPTA. I think it's a tax thing with your Foreign Investment in Real Estate Property Tax Act. Certain people might have to say they have taxes. And GAR forms. This is what the realtors are doing their CYA section, saying if their paperwork is wrong for anything, it's not their fault. Governing law and interpretation. This is the laws in the state of Georgia. Independent contractor. Your agent is an independent contractor. There's no imputed knowledge, which means that if you don't actually tell them, it might not be required to know. I think if it's not written formally. Notices between seller and broker. Communications. So you have to have communications with them. They are timely and sensitive nature, and you have to be reasonably available to receive communications from your broker. Notices between broker and seller regarding this agreement. Seller and broker agree that communications and notices between them should be in writing and signed by the party given notice and may be delivered in person to any address, email address, or facsimile number to the person to whom communication or notice is being specifically sent forth within this agreement. It is the intent of the parties that those means of transmitting notices for which a party has not provided an address or number shall not be used for other than receiving notices and communications. For example, if a party has not used an email address in this agreement, it shall mean that the party is not accepting notices, communications by this means. So when you sign everything, you'll have your contact information. They'll have to go through those forms of contact. Referrals. The agent. So say for example, you sell your house. It's the agent, and the place where you move in, that the agent knows someone else in that town, and you go buy through them. They can get a fee from the other agent just for referring you, and for other things involved like cleaning, even moving services and all that. They can get referral money. Statute of limitation for 1 year. Survival. This one it goes. This is how long the contract can last. The rights. So according to the termination of the expiration. So similar as I said before, it's gonna, if you have any real issues, it's gonna arbitration. But otherwise, if they find you a buyer, it's ready, willing, and able. Which I still got more to come in on that one. You could be or if they show that person, you could be held liable to pay that commission, even if you fire them. All right, this is getting a little bit long. Third-party vendors. If you use someone that they recommend, it's not necessarily like you're using your agent, so they're not liable for that. Time is of the essence with this agreement, so you need to be involved. If you use the initials NA or N/A in filling out the blank section of this agreement, it shall mean non-applicable. Now, if you say this agreement, it's more than just this 11-page document. It's also going to be all the other stuff that comes in with your property disclosure, all this other paperwork going to be involved: lead paint and the location of the house, all that information. So all that. Broker. Broker and seller's duties. Broker's duties to the seller. Broker shall promote the interests of the seller by seeking a sale price and terms stated in the agreement at a price or terms acceptable to the seller, provided, however, broker shall not be obligated to seek additional offers to purchase property while the property is subject to a contract unless brokerage engagement so provides. 2. Timely presenting all offers to the seller even if the property is under contract to sell. So your agent has to bring you all offers even if you're under contract. 3. Disclosing the seller material facts that the broker has actual knowledge of concerning this transaction, meaning your agent can't have secrets from you as well. If there's anything that they know, say for example, if they know your house might be worth significantly more because of some reason you don't know, they have to tell you. Agent should also advise seller to obtain expert advice as to material matters which are beyond the expertise, and as of timely accounting for all money, etc. Broker shall keep confidential information, where they can, according to law. Seller's duties. Seller will do the following: cooperate with the broker to sell a property, to mean which involves sale of property to the broker during the term. So you should work with them to help show this property. Make the property available for showing at reasonable times. Provide the broker with accurate information about the property. Comply with all state and local laws regarding the sale of this property, and carefully read all contracts to sell before signing them to comply with all duties and deadlines contained here within. So basically, all that is going into is that you have to, make the house available, and don't break the law, and you do your fair share and be available for what needs to go on to make these transactions happen. Seller's default. Now we are finally getting on the last page of a whole bunch of verbiage. All right. Events constituting a seller default. Seller shall be in breach of this agreement if the seller terminates this agreement prior to the end of the agreement without prior written agreement of broker. So you can cancel your contract, but you can't just stop working with them. You actually have to formally do it in writing. Seller default. Defaults under any contract to sell the property resulting in such contract not closing. And you have to do the reasonable things to make these things happen, to make the transaction happen. You have to agree with the buyer of the property to terminate a contract to sell without consent of a buyer. So if you agree to work with the buyer without your agent, that would be seller default. Refuses to accept a lawful bona fide written offer to purchase a property meeting the following terms and conditions at a time when a property is not otherwise under contract. So I guess the terms of a contract are generally a price and the contingencies with maybe inspection periods, etc., and closing date and all that. So if you get a full price offer, I'm going to try to summarize all of it. If you get a full price offer that is within 30 to 45 days out of closing and doesn't have any other conditions, and if it's a cash offer, then if you don't accept that, then you could be in breach of this agreement. But if they have contingencies like inspection periods or financing, um, all that, it doesn't have to. Those are things you can say no to. But so if they produce a ready, willing, and able buyer within reasonable terms, you could owe them a commission. So broker remedies for seller default shall be immediately pay the broker compensation referenced herein for any seller defaults above, except seller unilaterally terminating this agreement prior to the end of the listing period, as some may have been extended as provided to herein, for herein. With respect to this agreement, the seller, within the event of the default, a seller's obligation to pay broker its compensation shall be controlled by the protected period sections of this agreement. Seller default. Again, in the event that seller defaults under this agreement, seller shall, in addition to its obligations set forth herein, immediately disperse broker from out-of-pocket cost expenses incurred by the broker and broker's affiliated licensees or licensees in seeking to market and sell the property. We're through the worst of it. Then also you got to be aware of cyber fraud. That's some detail on how to tell some cyber fraud. All right. That was the worst part of it for reading wise. Now you can have a bunch of brochures. This is going to depend on what's in your house. You have mold, lead-based paint, what you can expect from an agent, radon, how to protect yourself when selling. They want to check these things if they gave them to you. Exhibits, you have the illegal description exhibit, the lead-based paint, any other fees, and the inspection report and special stipulations. All that's written in here. Now, so as I said, all those other forms are going to be listed as exhibits and addendum on here. So you will expect that this document, will be, starts off at 11 pages, and then it'll sometimes easily be 20 plus pages, depending on how long all those things take. And we got all these little check marks. So you got seller's signature. You have two. You can also have additional people. That comes up. This is all your contact information. This is the broker. It's all their contact information. And receipt of this copy is when everyone signs it. That's when it's ratified. So there we go. So hopefully I edited this to be not so confusing, and that it actually is helpful to you, and you maybe learn something, so you can be aware before you are just throwing this form in front of you and just sign it right there when your agent is wanting there. So I hope you have a little bit of a heads up on this. You know what to expect and what is expected of you. And so this is Alan. This is Investing in Georgia. If you learn something from this, or you feel better about what might be in this contract, please like, share, comment, or subscribe. Thanks.